Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. The Chase is a 1966 American drama film that was directed by Arthur Penn. It stars Marlon Brando, Jane Fonda, Robert Redford, with a supporting cast that includes E.G. Marshall, Angie Dickinson, Janice Rule, Miriam Hopkins, Martha Heyer, Robert Duvall, in one of the first roles I've ever seen him in. The storyline for the movie goes, a native of Terrell, Texas, Bubber Reeves, who's played by Robert Redford, is one of two who has just escaped prison together. Bubber is almost complete with his sentence. While he's not a model citizen, he was in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Many around there know him, including Terrell County Sheriff Calder. They all believe that he will be heading back to their small town because his wife, Anna Reeves, still lives there. Sheriff Calder, who's a farmer at heart, is biding his time in the job, which he absolutely hates. All this until he can afford to go back to being a farmer. He was appointed in this sheriff position by the influential, wealthiest man in town, Val Rogers. As such, Calder is caught in the middle, as most believe he is in Val's back pocket in doing what Val asked him to do. Val is probably the only person in town that doesn't know that his son, Jake Rogers, is having an affair with Anna. Jake and Anna had dated before she married Bubber. In that vein, Anna really truly does love both of them in different ways. As the people in the town await Bubber's return, including his parents, his mother in particular, who loves him but blames herself for the way that he turned out. The moral decay in the town in general is highlighted, many of whom have their own view of what should happen to Bubber and how to achieve it to their satisfaction against what they perceive will happen in part on their view of Calder. That moral decay is only heightened as many mistakenly believe Bubber the perpetrator of the murder of a traveling salesman. The film deals with excessive immorality and vice, with such themes as racism, sexual revolution, small-town corruption, and vigilantism. The production is perhaps best known for a scene in which the sheriff, played by Marlon Brando, is brutally beaten by Richard Bradford, one of the three vigilantes. Sam Spiegel was quite fond of Marlon Brando, who had won his first Best Actor Oscar in the Spiegel-produced Best Picture winner On the Waterfront from 1954. When he cast Brando for this role, Spiegel was really concerned because Brando was a motorcycle enthusiast, and he was afraid that he would end up killing himself during the production, much like James Dean did in his accident. He had badly torn a knee up in a crash prior to filming. Spiegel constantly asked the director if Brando had brought his motorcycle with him while filming. When Brando got wind of this, he had his motorcycle brought over to the set to play a joke on the producer. After arriving at the set, the producer realized that Brando didn't ride it there. Spiegel initially brought Lillian Hellman into the project, but her script had to be completely rewritten. He then refused to show her a final cut of the film before release. Spiegel was also responsible for signing the then relatively unknown Robert Redford to play the role of Bubber. He brought in Arthur Penn to direct, and as time went on, they didn't have a very harmonious relationship during the production, and the producer felt like Penn really hurt the film. Later on in the production, Spiegel didn't allow the director to edit the film himself. This caused Penn to completely disown the release of the film and said he didn't want any ties to it at all. Released with great expectations due to all the talent involved in it, this movie proved to be a critical and financial disappointment, and it signaled the beginning of the end of Spiegel's successful film production career. At some point later on after the release, Columbia Pictures contacted Penn, the director, and offered to let him re-edit the film back to the original version that he envisioned. He told them that he appreciated the offer, but the entire experience on it had been too painful, and that he'd just rather leave it completely behind. Now you'll see one of the first appearances that I ever remember, and that being of Robert Duvall. During this film, he was paid $30,000, which was his biggest paycheck at that time. The casting directors looked at Faye Dunaway, but they ended up telling her that she wasn't pretty enough to be in movies, that she needed to stick to theater instead. Boy, they couldn't have been more wrong on that one. Initially, when the production was underway, just in the thought process, the producer had Marlon Brando in line to play the role of Jake Rogers, and either Marilyn Monroe or Kim Novak to play his lover, Anna Reeves. By the time the production began in 1965, Brando was too old to play that role of the son, and he ended up taking the part as Sheriff Calder instead. You'll also see his sister in a small role playing Miss Briggs. Her name is Jocelyn Brando. After everything was said and done, Brando didn't like this part. He felt like all he did in the film was wander around. In the fight scene, where Brando gets beaten up, for extra realism, the director instructed the actors to actually punch Brando in extreme slow motion and really connect with his body. Due to the slow speed of their punches, Brando is not harmed at all. The scene was then processed at normal speed, and the punches looked as though they were causing serious damage to the actor. Despite the order on the screencast list, Jane Fonda doesn't have near the screen time that Angie Dickinson does. This is one of those films that just makes you fall in love with Angie Dickinson, and she's always been such a class act in the filming business. Her addition to any film made it a much better production. But back in 1993, she kind of left everybody speechless, not knowing what was going on in the TV show This Is Your Life. It ended as quickly as it began, with the very surprised actress exclaiming that she wasn't doing it, and she stormed out after being told what was going on. Left behind were host Pat Sajak and the other guests that were waiting to honor her. She was down out mad about this, and people lost a lot of respect for this lady after this happened. I think she meant well, and she really just didn't want the attention put on her that there were so many other people involved in her success. But that's not the way it appears when you see the clip of the show. Take a look at this really good movie. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.